Okay, we are going to talk about base years. If your operating expenses, they keep going up every year, your taxes, your CAM, your insurance, even though nothing has changed, this video is going to explain why. Most of the time, it just comes down to understanding one key concept here, and that is your base year. Okay, so think of the base year as the first calendar year or fiscal year used as the benchmark for operating expenses. Once again, the year used as the benchmark for operating expenses under your lease. Okay? That's the definition. From that point forward, the tenant is going to be responsible only for increases in operating expenses above the base year. That's something that's very important to understand. Okay, so this is where the confusion happens. People don't understand what base year really means. Most commercial real estate leases, the base year is that first year. From that point forward, you are typically responsible for the increase in expenses above that year, not the full operating expenses, not anything else. Think of the base year as the beginning of your expense responsibility. Whatever expenses existed in that year are assumed to be billed into the rent. Now, here's an example. Let's say your total operating expenses are $100,000 for the year. That includes property taxes, your insurance, your maintenance. That is the amount baseline for your base year. Okay? Now, in year two, the operating expenses increase for the property. They change from 100 to 115,000. Okay? Now that's a $15,000 increase. The $15,000 increase, and once again, I want to highlight increase here, is the number the lease focuses on when it comes to operating expenses above the base year. Okay. Does that make sense? I hope it does. So, if the base year, though, if that's incorrect, or if you don't have a good understanding of what the actual expenses in the base year are, then you are going to be confused when the future increases come. Tenants often never verify what the base year expenses are. Now, sometimes you're going to be in a position where the broker, the landlord, the property manager, they're going to say, well, we don't know what the expenses are because we haven't received expenses for that year just yet. At that point, what you're going to do is you're going to look at the historical expenses because even if they didn't receive expenses for that year, they have received expenses for all the previous years. So they've seen expenses year in and year out, and they've seen the history of how the expenses change. And from that, we're going to be able to get a pattern and we're going to be able to understand the averages on how much the expenses change. So that's going to allow for us to then have a pretty good projected understanding of what our expenses will be over the base year. So the other thing is we really want to understand what's included, right? We don't know if there were one-time expenses included during this base year. We don't know if this is a reoccurring expense. We really have to take apart those expenses so that we can have supreme clarity there. And that is essentially it. So the base year mechanics, they usually apply to all operating expenses that the lease allows to be passed through. Once again, refer back to your lease, your taxes, your CAMs, your insurance. Sometimes it's management fees. But anytime you're reviewing your lease or you're looking at the expenses that you were billed, you should be able to understand what year is the base year, what expenses were included in that year, and how are the increases measured against that baseline and exactly what you're paying for. If you don't have clarity here, you are in a bad situation. You may be overpaying and you may be in a position where you have paid for something which you should have not paid for as a tenant. This is foundational principles for leasing and understanding what your expenses are as a tenant. If the foundation is wrong, then everything on top of it will be as well. If you need help with this, if you have questions surrounding base year, this is the kind of work that we do at commercialrealestate.com, please reach out to us and we would love to have a conversation. I hope you have a great rest of your day. I appreciate you for watching. Thank you.